Coming up, a Freeman cardiologist has a warning for 4-staters as COVID-19 cases continue to rise in our region. And Missouri Governor Parson signs a bill that would increase police accountability and limit chokeholds. Also, the first step in an overdue improvement project in Joplin.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Good morning and welcome to the KOAM Morning News. It's 5 a.m. I'm Zach Dodge. Now let's go to Michael Hayslip with a look at the first forecast.
Number one, I want to point out that I told you earlier in the hallway that a tie is rocking.
Thank you.
You pull that off and pull it off extremely well. I want you to know that. Zach, our current conditions over 7th and Rangeline right now, extremely warm morning, 76 degrees. That means it won't take long for the instability to rise with as much Gulf moisture as we've picked up lately. Also, too, wind has not died down, still coming in at 13 miles per hour. So it's comfortable outside, if not even a tad bit muggy, as Chanute in Yates Center still sitting at 78. That's some amazing overnight temperatures right there. 74 in Neosho and in Miami. Let's roll 75 in Lamar and Carthage. Now, the wind came in. We got some 25-mile-an-hour gusts overnight. We're sitting right now in between about that 10 to 15-mile-an-hour range. Let's go ahead and talk about number one, our latest watch and warning. It's going to be a flood warning for the Osage, but now I want to turn our attention what's up to our northwest, because that turquoise color that you see, that indicates a flash flood watch until 10 o'clock tonight. Thunderstorms and heavy rainfall already transpiring in that portion of the 4 states. As far as what we're looking at nationally speaking, you can tell that this system right here where we're seeing the rain, it's actually going to push off to the northeast a little bit, but it's an indicator of, number one, those northwestern counties are going to get clipped just a tad, and also, too, we've got more rain headed our way for this afternoon and evening. So most of the morning we're going to get out unscathed, because watch top of your screen there. See how that'll track toward Kansas City? But now it begins to build here for the afternoon. And it's going to do about a 180 directionally. Instead of pushing up toward the northeast, it's going to drop down to the southeast, roll through us here overnight. We're going to get some heavy rain at times. Could see up to 2 inches in isolated pockets, and it's going to last all the way into Friday morning. Severe thunderstorm risk map, our greatest threat is going to be some high winds on that line that rolls right through there, lasts all the way from the panhandles up to the Great Lakes, runs right through us, as temperatures will be in the high 80s later on this afternoon. We'll throw some 90s up there too. But then we ride high 80s into the Friday, Saturday, Sunday as well.
For sure. And it's unfortunate to see that instead of letting the one flood warning, flash flood warning drop off,
we're adding on to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you very much, Michael. COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are on the rise in the 4-state area, and it's a major cause for concern for Joplin's Freeman coronavirus team. Freeman cardiologist Robert Stauffer is trying to convince the unvaccinated public to get their shots and address the media, saying vaccines are the only way for the 4-state area to truly overcome the pandemic. He also has a warning for those who think that because they previously had the coronavirus, that they're now in the clear.
Some people will say, well, I had COVID. That doesn't necessarily protect you against this Delta variant. I want you to understand that very seriously. The vaccines do, but having COVID does not necessarily protect you from getting this Delta variant, which is much more contagious and a much more serious illness.
Joplin's mayor tells us that city government is listening to the local medical community and it is not currently discussing bringing back COVID-19 restrictions. He and other members of city leadership believe focusing on getting the community vaccinated is the best way to beat the virus. Babysitting is a common job for many young people, but they often don't get very much training. Freeman Health System is trying to provide that training through their Safe Sitter program. Through the program, people can learn CPR and other strategies to keep kids under their care safe and engaged.
The confidence to be great babysitters, that they remember what they've learned with CPR and choking, so that if they are put in a hard situation like that, that they are well equipped to save that child's life. And even though they may not come into a situation like that while babysitting, they may have that happen while they're in the real world.
Freeman has been providing the safe sitting classes for more than 25 years. Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed bills that would increase police accountability, limit the use of officer chokeholds, and, critics say, shield police while ramping up penalties for protesters. One measure puts limits on investigations of officers and provides protection against civil claims unless the officer is criminally convicted. The other bans police use of chokeholds. The city of Joplin is performing a structural analysis on a parking structure on East 6th Street between Main and Virginia Avenue. The analysis comes after pieces of the structure's ramp fell off when a forklift drove over it. That section of the street is closed off while the work is completed. Crews are currently using a non-destructive method of testing, X-raying the underlying structural steel.
When that reinforcing steel becomes exposed and becomes deteriorated, then you have concerns about the structural integrity, and we're way ahead of any imminent failure.
The last time the structure was rehabbed was in the 80s. Renovations are expected to take place this winter. The city of Columbus, Kansas gave residents an update on changes to the city's permitting and code policies. City officials say they're trying to speed up projects that would otherwise get bogged down in red tape. So they made changes to the permit process as well as city codes. Officials say the goal of these changes is to encourage more people to move to Columbus.
We really want to develop those relationships and be partners with the community members and all those in the construction field. We really want to draw as much outside visitors and potential residents here as we possibly can.
Residents that showed up to the presentation were given a free dinner and door prizes. Buffalo Run Casino and Resort in Miami, Oklahoma unveiled recent renovations made to the building. The renovations include a new esports lounge and a golf simulator. There's also a new bar and stage set up.
Afternoon after our ribbon cutting, we invited all of our guests from the chamber and community representatives into the casino, into the restaurant, and it filled up very quickly. And so we were glad to share appetizers and stories and handshakes. It was a great afternoon.
In total, the renovations cost more than $3 million. It's 5:07.
Let's start looking at our temperatures as we are in the mid-70s right now. We'll get to our warnings here in a second, or our watches and warnings, I should say. But it's a very warm morning, albeit even a little bit muggy out there. Now, we know we're going to get our fair share of rainfall, and that's indicated by the amount of counties in the turquoise. That indicates a flash flood watch running all the way until Friday afternoon. We'll watch for thunderstorm activity to develop out to our northwest. And as it drops in through the afternoon and evening hours, it will actually carry us all the way in to Friday. Temperatures up into the 80s. Biggest threat right now, just making sure you're safe and anticipating that flooding.
That's a look at this morning's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Coming up on the KOAM Morning News, COVID cases on the rise.
The White House enlists a pop star to help young people get vaccinated against COVID-19. I'm Bradley Blackburn with why it's important as the Delta variant spreads.
Plus, a unique fundraiser for Pittsburgh High School wrestling team that's put them in a cornfield. And a plan to legalize cannabis at the federal level. You're watching the KOAM Morning News. More real news in the morning. We'll be right back.
Hey, this
was opening day of the Premier Baseball Junior National Championship in the 4 states. Big tournament now, 35 teams playing in ballparks all over the area through the weekend. The local SoMo All-Stars playing their first game last night in Neosho, facing the Southside Prospects out of St. Louis. SoMo gets right to it. Carson Johnson deep into right field. Brett Sarwinski comes in for the first run of the game. That's a triple for Johnson. Then Case Tucker gaps one to left center. How about another triple? Johnson scores 4-0 after the first inning, thanks in part to those 2 triples. SoMo adds more in the 4th. Sebastian Middick steals 3rd. Throw gets away. Middick's going to score. Late in the game, Alex Baker on 3rd off another triple. Middick up the middle brings home Baker. Hot start for the All-Stars as they shut out the St. Louis Prospects 8-0. In the Mink League, Joplin Outlaws at home against the Jefferson City Renegades. Joplin in a little bit of a slide right now, going 1-4 in their last 5 games. Outlaws had a 4-2 lead, but Jeff City comes back and wins this thing 8-6. Jared Toller goes 3 for 5 with a pair of RBIs. A unique fundraiser puts the Pittsburgh High School team wrestling team in a cornfield. We caught up with the team to get the story behind the tradition and how one four-state family helps the team make a little money.
The Pittsburgh High School wrestling team went to work on Wednesday night.
We come out here and this is one of our biggest fundraisers for the season.
The team sold sweet corn this summer to raise money. The twist, after selling it, they have to pick the corn themselves.
It's manual labor out here, you know, it's warm out here, the sun is shining, so it's awesome. We're wrestlers, you know, we're cut from a different cloth. We're used to hard work, so it's good for us to get out here and get together in the summer and raise money for the program.
It's good to see the boys and the girls come out and do a little elbow work.
The corn comes from a farm owned by Pittsburgh's Gentry and John White, whose son JJ is on the team.
About 6 years ago, John and I decided that, you know, we would like to give back to our kids' sporting events. You know, anything that they do travel-wise costs a lot of money. And so we thought giving back to the teams would be a helpful way that we could contribute.
They're really good to us. They spend their money to get us corn, and we pick it and sell it for the wrestling team.
100% of the profits go back to the wrestling team. In addition to being a way to raise money, it's a chance to build team chemistry and a lesson in earning what you get.
It is work no matter what you're doing in agriculture. It's work in athletics. I think, you know, it encompasses giving back to the community. It's not a cold call. It's actually a good quality product. It's 100% profit, and these kids are, you know, doing a little bit of work to help benefit them later in the year.
It makes it a good team bonding thing for us, so that's another reason I like it. We come out here and pick the corn together, and I think it builds our team bond and chemistry, and we carry that forward through the season.
The team has sold about 240 dozen ears of sweet corn. Not 240 ears, 240 dozen ears, with 100% of the profits going back to the program. Still to come on the KOAM Morning News, the trek to Japan.
The countdown to the Olympics is on. I'm Kevin Cork in Washington with more on how Team USA is preparing to compete. That's just ahead.
And to check on our 7-day forecast when the KOAM Morning News returns.
Nothing can.
Little past 5:17, roll some weather on the 7s here. It is a warm morning, that is for sure. Let's go back to 7th and Rangeline. That's where we'll begin our track for today. 76 degrees as we hang over Joplin. 13-mile-per-hour south wind. That thing just did not calm down last night. Last gust we picked up was 22 miles per hour. Everywhere from 78s in the northwestern portion of southeast Kansas. Got a couple 72s in Monette and Cassville. All things being said, it's very, very comfortable outside now. Wind has not shifted as of yet, but look up in the far left-hand corner up there. See where that little swirl begins to happen? That's that low-pressure system that's making its way through Kansas and is going to bring us afternoon thunderstorms. What we're seeing so far on the radar hasn't really affected any of our counties. Throwing down some lightning on this thing as it's moving actually toward Kansas City, not dropping down on us. That really won't happen until later this morning when it develops and then be on us for the afternoon and evening hours. Kind of cheat with the storm tracks right there and give you an idea of exactly that track that it wants to take. Now, with that being said, we do have flash flood watches for everybody in turquoise. An idea that anywhere from 1 to 3 inches as this storm system moves through. That flash flood watch lasts all the way into Friday afternoon. Also, too, the flood warning for the Osage River. It has been extended all the way into next week. You know, what we're anticipating is while it's going to drop below flood stage here momentarily, it's actually just going to go right back up by the time we get to Sunday with all the water that we'll have from our sporadic rain. Skywatch Storm Tracker give you an idea of that one system that stretches from the Panhandle up to the Great Lakes. But once again, remember, ours is actually going to collapse down on us, so at least we stay out of the fray for this morning. Highs in the high 80s today, and then overnight, we're just going to have to know that and anticipate that roads are going to flood. So once again, there's your northeasterly movement. Now, when we get to the afternoon, then this thing begins to drop on us, and that's why the flash flood watches are there, because that's some heavy rain at times. We'll throw a little thunder and lightning in there as well, and with the severe thunderstorm risk map, don't discount a high gust of wind every now and then as well. Temperatures going to remain in the high 80s into the weekend. After we get through this pretty good round of rain, it'll be more scattered and sporadic there from Saturday into Sunday. Time now to turn our attention to the KOAM News Now Facebook page and our morning Insta poll. Democratic senators introduce a plan to legalize cannabis at a federal level. You have Senators Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and Ron Wyden dubbing their plan the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. Plan comes after a call for decriminalization of marijuana from several lawmakers. Schumer saying the legislation would include social justice provisions, federal taxes, and regulations. Our question for you specifically, should cannabis be legalized on the federal level? You can let us know what you think by going to KOAMnewsnow.com/vote. We'll be back with Health Watch right after this.
Topping Health Watch this morning, the White House brought in one of the world's biggest musicians to encourage young Americans to get vaccinated. It comes at a time when COVID cases are on the rise in nearly every part of the country. CBS's Bradley Blackburn has the latest.
From Texas to California, there's no question who is still getting sick from COVID-19.
Over 99% of our COVID admissions have not been vaccinated. It's dramatic. It's stark. It is undeniable.
99% of all the cases occurring in the U.S. right now, certainly hospitalizations and deaths, are among unvaccinated people.
Driven mostly by the Delta variant, new cases in 48 states are up at least 10%. In 32 states, they are up 50% or more.
Youth vaccination.
Pop star Olivia Rodrigo visited President Biden at the White House and encouraged younger Americans to get their shots. Just a quarter of the country's 12 to 15-year-olds are fully vaccinated.
It's important to have conversations with friends and family members, encouraging all communities to get vaccinated.
Dr. Joseph Chang says those conversations are the best way to reach skeptics.
Find our friends and family, because we all have them. Tell them how good you feel about being protected.
In Missouri, beauty salons and barber shops around St. Louis will soon be places where residents can learn more about vaccines.
Barbershops and beauty salons are trusted places in many communities. Places where people go not just to take care of their hair, but to catch up on current events and exchange information.
Fewer than 50% of adults in Missouri are fully protected against COVID-19. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News.
In Chicago, unvaccinated travelers from Missouri and Arkansas will need to quarantine for 10 days or show a negative COVID test. A study at Massachusetts General Hospital has identified a molecule that may prevent Alzheimer's disease. The molecule works to modify the immune system and brain inflammation to protect against dementia. Researchers hope the discovery could lead to new treatments for neurological diseases. New research on mice finds antibiotics early in life can affect brain development. The study at Rutgers University shows mice exposed to low-dose penicillin just before birth or immediately after have altered genes in the part of the brain where memory is developed. In the U.S., the average child receives 3 courses of antibiotics before age 2. Smartphone pictures can help detect anemia. Researchers in Rhode Island say a photo of a person's inner eyelid can be used to estimate blood hemoglobin concentration and predict anemia. They say a cell phone app may one day be used to screen for the blood condition. That's a look at some of today's top health stories. You're watching the KOAM Morning News.
In the 70s right now, we're going to be off to a nice start this morning. It's really just paying attention to the possibility of flooding as we have flash flood watches in anticipation of our afternoon and evening thunderstorms. As they roll through, we're going to see them gather out to the northwest and drop down on us. They'll work from northwest dropping to the southeast, and it's going to be several rounds of rain here because even through Friday, we're going to have more lingering activity. So let's take heed and anticipate the flooding right now, as a 7-day forecast will still bring us more sporadic rain showers on Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures just a little bit below average, actually, for this time of year, as we'll ride the high 80s. A little bit of a break there from Sunday into Monday into the mid 80s before the heat returns in the middle of next week.
Coming up, a Freeman cardiologist has a warning for 4-staters as COVID-19 cases continue to rise in our region. And Missouri Governor PARSON signs a bill that would increase police accountability and limit chokeholds. Also, the first step in an overdue improvement project in Joplin.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Good morning and welcome to the KOAM Morning News. It's 5:30. I'm Zach Dodge. We're going to be getting rain chances later on today. What do you think,
We're going to
Michael?
be okay this morning. They'll begin to develop here later this morning, but they're really not going to drop down on us until the afternoon hours. We've still got 40 minutes until sunrise, but I thought this was a pretty neat shot hanging over 7th and Rangeline as the sky just begins to lighten up a little bit. It's 76 degrees right now in Joplin. It's a nice, warm, comfortable morning. 75 in Carthage and Lamar, throw Miami in there as well. 78 in Chanute. That's been consistently our warm spot. Now, a little bit deceiving because we were talking about thunderstorm activity developing to our northwest, but this one is actually going to keep on headed toward Kansas City. Our far western counties of southeast Kansas are going to get a little bit of this, but this is not the one that's prompted all the flash flood watches that we have in effect for pretty much the entire 4 states. This is going to be for the afternoon ones that develop anywhere from 1.5 to 3 inches of rain by the time we're done, and that also means extension of the flood warning for the Osage River all the way until Tuesday of next week. A weather trend is going to have temps in the high 80s, may even see a sporadic 90 thrown up by the time the rain actually does set in. And so as it tracks toward KC, this thing's going to stop in its tracks around the noon hour and then say, all right, I'm going to come right through your counties all the way into Friday morning. That's some good heavy rain that we're getting right there. We'll pick up some thunder and lightning as well, and don't discount some high winds to go along with it. Rain comes sporadic, if you will, after that into Friday. Get up there. There we go. Temperature is going to maintain the high 80 mark. Biggest one right now, Zach, is let's go ahead and plan on those roads being flooded by the time you wake up tomorrow morning.
And it's nice to have a morning where it feels nice outside, unlike yesterday where it was sticky and soupy.
The humidity
at this
does
time.
not feel bad. The humidity does not feel as bad yesterday or today as what it did yesterday. Yeah, you're exactly right.
But thank you very much, Michael. The total number of COVID-19 patients in Joplin hospitals exceeds 100 people. Between Freeman and Mercy hospitals, there are 104 hospitalized COVID-19 patients. 19 of those hospitalizations are Joplin residents. 138 Joplin residents have died from COVID-19. COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are on the rise in the 4-state area, and it's a major cause for concern for Joplin's Freeman coronavirus team. Freeman cardiologist Robert Stauffer is trying to convince the unvaccinated public to get their shots and address the media, saying vaccines are the only way for the 4-state area to truly overcome the pandemic. He also has a warning for those who think that because they were previously,
Some people will say, well, I had COVID. That doesn't necessarily protect you against this Delta variant. I want you to understand that very seriously. The vaccines do, but having COVID does not necessarily protect you from getting this Delta variant, which is much more contagious and a much more serious illness.
Joplin's mayor tells us that the city government is listening to the local community, but is not currently discussing bringing back COVID-19 restrictions. He and other members of city leadership believe focusing on getting the community vaccinated is the best way to beat the virus. The city of Joplin is performing a structural analysis on a parking structure on East 6th Street between Main and Virginia Avenue. The analysis comes after pieces of the structure's ramp fell off when a forklift drove over it. That section of the street is closed off while the work is completed. Crews are currently using a non-destructive method of testing, X-raying the underlying structural steel.
That reinforcing steel becomes exposed and becomes deteriorated, then you have concerns about the structural integrity, and we're way ahead of any imminent failure.
The last time the structure was rehabbed was in the 80s. Renovations are expected to take place in the winter. Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed bills that would increase police accountability, limit the use of officer chokeholds, and, critics say, shield police while ramping up penalties for protesters. One measure puts limits on investigations of officers and provides protection against civil claims unless the officer is criminally convicted. The other bans police use of chokeholds. The governor this week also signed into law a measure that will increase Missouri's gasoline tax. It's the first tax hike in the state in 25 years. Reporter Brooke Buckner tells us more about the bill and how those paying that extra tax feel about the change.
Just take an honest opinion of yourselves. The reason you live where you live is because of infrastructure.
The new law, made official Tuesday, will raise Missouri's gas tax, which will directly go to maintaining the state's roads, bridges, and overall transportation system.
As the Constitution of the state of Missouri says, we fund our highway systems through this process, and we all need to remember that's how we do it. And it's worked that way for many, many years, and I tell you, it's our time to make sure we continue that tradition.
Governor Parson tells me this law is different than ones voted on in the past. This time around, you can be reimbursed if you keep your gas receipts.
You have an option. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it.
This year, the tax will go up 2.5 cents. It will continue to rise 2.5 cents until 2025. Some people in the community have mixed reactions about this gas tax hike.
Well, I'd be opposed to it because I'm already feeling it at the pump now. There's been an increase since the political change parties, and I feel that if it's to improve the roads and infrastructure, that would be a good thing. However, there's already a deal in play, I believe, to improve the roads and the bridges. So I think that would just be an extra added cost for no reason.
As we live in day by day, time goes by, everything gradually goes up, wages, food, gas also. So it's expected that it will go up here and there.
I'm kind of against it due to the fact I drive a V8 and it already costs like $60 to fill up my tank now. But then again, on the other hand, there's a lot of the roads do need to be fixed and repaired, so I'm kind of torn right in the middle about it.
We hope that most of the people will understand once we can prove how we're spending the money, that we're really building the infrastructure in the state, they'll be supportive of it.
If you want to be reimbursed, you need to keep your fuel receipts and finish a one-page process through the Missouri Department of Revenue each year. That's a look at our top news stories. Coming up this half hour on the KOAM Morning News, a legal victory.
Britney Spears has her voice again in court. I'm Bradley Blackburn with a major legal victory that has her fans celebrating.
Plus, members of Team USA are starting their trek to Japan ahead of next week's Olympics. We'll have the latest as athletes prepare to compete in empty stadiums, and Ralph Lauren reveals new technology used in their uniforms. But first, it's 5:38.
Watching this line of thunderstorms up on our far northwest, just kind of trying to creep into our highlighted counties just a little bit. But the important thing to remember, excuse me, is that our thunderstorm activity begins in earnest this afternoon. We've got flash flood watches all the way till tomorrow afternoon. We'll be back with World Watch next.
Topping World Watch, members of Team USA descending on Tokyo ahead of this summer's Olympic Games. And with a little more than a week until opening day, many are still preparing to compete in empty arenas and maintain strict COVID-19 safety precautions. Kevin Cork has more on that story, plus an inside look at the special technology being used in some of the uniforms.
With the Summer Olympic Games beginning next week, members of Team USA are embarking on their treks to Tokyo. Gymnastics star Simone Biles and her teammates getting an exciting send-off Wednesday. For them, the desire to compete is only getting stronger.
We have a really strong team going, so I'm excited to see what we'll bring.
But when Biles gets the chance to go for the gold, she'll do it without the support of live fans, something she's coming to terms with.
It's going to be really tough, I think, only because I've never competed without a crowd.
Members of the International Olympic Committee support the decision to not allow fans due to COVID-19, saying the athletes' safety is their top priority. Still, officials say there's so much fans around the world can celebrate.
These games will send a message of unity and solidarity during this still ongoing pandemic, and a message of hope.
And leading up to the games, you can catch an early glimpse of the innovative Team USA opening ceremony uniforms. American fashion house Ralph Lauren has outfitted the flag bearer jackets with tiny air conditioning units while incorporating sustainable elements into the rest of their designs.
The belt is made of recycled bottles. The fabrics we're using are using less water in the dyeing process.
Meanwhile, it seems like preventing the spread of COVID-19 in Tokyo could prove an awfully daunting task. In fact, Japanese health officials say they've recently experienced the highest number of daily cases in the country in the past 6 months.
NASA researchers predict a wobble in the moon's orbit could impact sea levels in the next decade. They say the flooding from the shift in the moon's orbit could result in significant damage to infrastructure and may force people to be displaced from coastal areas in the 20s, 30s, and 30s. The wobble in the 2030s, sorry about that. The wobble in the moon's orbit is actually a natural phenomenon which reportedly last occurred in 1728. Scientists are concerned this event will be more intense due to climate change, which is already attributing to higher than normal sea levels. That's a look at some of your biggest headlines from around the world. Now let's toss it over to Michael for our Something to Talk About.
Thank you, Zach. Democratic senators on the KOAM News Now Facebook page. Democratic senators introduce a plan to legalize cannabis and do so at the federal level. Senators Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and Ron Wyden dubbed their plan the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. It's a plan that comes after a call for decriminalization of marijuana from several lawmakers. Schumer says the legislation would include social justice provisions, federal taxes, and regulations. Meantime, 18 states, 2 U.S. territories, and D.C. have legalized marijuana for recreational use. Legal cannabis sales in the country surpass $17.5 billion with a B, billion dollars in 2020, compared to just more than 12 million in 2019. Our question for you this morning: should cannabis be legalized on the federal level? When I said you, Zach, I was talking to the audience. I realized when you and I were in the boxes like that,
right?
Almost made it sound like I was asking you. Zach Dodge can vote along with anybody that hasn't voted yet by going to KOAMnewsnow.com/vote. This is a tight one so far right now. 37% say yes, 33% say medical cannabis only, and 30% say no. Can't get any tighter than that in my book.
Right, not really. Not with only 3 options, but yeah.
So we'll continue to update this and see which way it falls here as we progress through the show. We're going to come back with the news you need to know before you head out the door right after this.
Here's a check of today's top headlines. The news you need to know before you head out the door. Thousands of firefighters are battling dozens of wildfires across large parts of the western U.S. More than 1 million acres of land have burned in about a dozen states. That as U.S. fire officials report a shortage of jet fuel that could ground some planes used to drop retardant on fires. COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are on the rise in the 4-state area, and it's a major cause for concern for Freeman's coronavirus team. Freeman cardiologist Robert Stauffer is trying to convince the unvaccinated public to get their shots and address the media, saying vaccines are the only way for the 4-state area to truly overcome the pandemic. Joplin's mayor tells us that city government is listening to the local medical community, but is not currently discussing bringing back COVID-19 restrictions. He and other members of city leadership believe focusing on getting the community vaccinated is the best way to beat the virus. Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed bills that would increase police accountability, limit the use of officer chokeholds, and, critics say, shield police while ramping up penalties for protesters. One measure puts limits on investigations of officers and provides protection against civil claims unless the officer is criminally convicted. The other bans police use of chokeholds. The city of Joplin is performing a structural analysis on a parking structure on East 6th Street between Main and Virginia Avenue. The analysis comes after pieces of the structure's ramp fell off when a forklift drove over it. That section of the street is closed off while the work is completed. Crews are currently using a non-destructive method of testing, X-raying the underlying structural steel. Renovations are expected to take place in the winter. That's a check of today's top headlines, the news you need to know before you head out the door.
Gorgeous start to our Thursday, Zach, but we know we're just sitting back and waiting for the afternoon thunderstorms to arrive and carry us all the way into Friday. Temperatures ranging from the low to high 70s. Chanute's still chiming in at 78. Now, this thunderstorm activity up to our northwest, that's actually not the one that's going to be on us for the afternoon. That is another one. It's moving toward Kansas City instead. Well, after we get to the afternoon hours, that's why we've got flash flood watches indicated in turquoise for just about every county, and a flood warning that's been extended for the Osage River as well. While temperatures are going to range up into the high 80s today, the big threat is going to be anticipating that flooding, because once it starts, we're looking at 1.5 inches to 3 inches of rain as it gathers to the northwest, drops down to the southeast through tonight, a little thunder and lightning to go along with it, and then more of the scattered variety all through Friday morning as well. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News right after this.
A major legal victory for pop star Britney Spears. The 39-year-old singer is one step closer to ending the conservatorship that she's lived under for more than a decade. And as CBS's Bradley Blackburn reports, her fans are celebrating.
Conservatorship has got to go! It is the rallying cry for Britney Spears fans across the country.
What do we want? Free Britney!
And from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., this was more than a circus. It was a real celebration of a legal win.
I mean, it's really sad that she was allowed to live in this type of situation for 13 years.
On Wednesday, a Los Angeles judge ruled Spears can hire her own attorney as she fights to end a court-ordered conservatorship that's been in place for 13 years. She's hired a former federal prosecutor.
My firm and I are going to be taking a top-to-bottom look at what's happened here over the past decade.
Spears wants her father, Jamie Spears, removed as her conservator. He's responsible for her financial affairs. The hearing came just weeks after Spears made stunning allegations against the conservatorship, saying she was forced to work against her will and use a contraceptive device to prevent her from having any more kids. During a call to the court yesterday, Britney sobbed as she accused her dad of abuse.
Pursuant to Britney Spears' instructions, we will be moving promptly and aggressively for his removal.
On Instagram, Spears posted video of herself doing cartwheels and wrote, quote, "With new representation today, I feel gratitude." She thanked those dedicated fans who argue this is about mental health and individual rights.
This is about a human being that has had her civil rights and human rights stripped away from her.
If she wins her case, Spears has said she may retire from singing. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
Britney says she plans to press charges against her father. The outcome of this case could have a ripple effect on the more than 1 million Americans under conservatorships, according to the DOJ. That controls about $50 billion in assets.
It's 39, right?
That sounds about right to me.
Remember the old cry, "Leave Britney alone."
Right.
I did not know that they were marching in the streets for her.
I didn't completely realize that either. I knew it was all over social media for sure, but as far as the in-person rallies, that's yeah.
I guess I need to do more social media, Zach. one thing in my life will probably not get
and
done.
Speaking of social media, we want to check out the Insta poll again real quick?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, my social media consists of MLB Twitter feed. That's the extent of my social media. Hey, you going to the Royals game?
Say again?
Okay. Trying to get Zach up to the K. KOAM News Now Facebook page and our morning Insta poll. Zach's been chomping at the bit about this. Should cannabis be legalized on the federal level? Right now, 53% say yes, 22% say medical only, and 25% say no. So now we're starting to see a little bit of a gap there for our votes, and we'll continue to update this throughout the course of the morning. You have you can log on to the KOAM News Now Facebook page, and it'll take you to the Insta poll, or you can go straight to it by going to koamnewsnow.com/vote. Be back. Let's update the old radar right after this. Look at this shot right here. I was ready. Look at how they would go one way outside Television City, go the other way outside 7th and Rangeline. I just thought that was kind of neat right there. Same sliver of sun we're looking at, just two completely different angles. All right, so here's what we've got cooking up to the northwest. Starting to see a little bit move through Greenwood County, and then up toward Burlington and Garnett as well. It's got some lightning with it, but remember, it really doesn't kick in until the afternoon. We'll be back right after this.
Coming up, a Freeman cardiologist has a warning for 4 staters as COVID-19 cases continue to rise in our region. And Missouri Governor PARSON signs a bill that would increase police accountability and limit chokeholds. Also, the first step in an overdue improvement project in Joplin.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Good morning and welcome to the KOAM Morning News. It's 6 a.m. I'm Zach Dodge, and before we get to the stories we just kind of teased you with, we're going to go to Michael Hayslip with our look at the weather.
All right, Zach, look at this gorgeous shot over 7th and Rangeline. We're still about 10 minutes away from official sunrise, but just bringing us a multitude of colors on this Thursday, July the 15th. 75 degrees is where we stand. We've had as warm as 78. Now Chinook's down to 77, down. I mean, what a great start to our morning. And as Zach and I were talking earlier, it's not as humid. It doesn't feel, put it that way, it doesn't feel as humid as what it was yesterday. All right, so we do have some thunderstorm activity to concern ourselves with in our far northwestern counties of southwest Missouri. It has had a little bit of lightning with it. Haven't picked up any storm reports. But for the most part, this is moving towards Kansas City. We're not going to see a whole lot of action with this one. Ours isn't going to gather till this afternoon and then drop down on us. So once again, out in the far west right there, this one coming out of right there in between Howard and Sedan. That's got a chance to roll over Highway 400 if you're headed out to the west. So that'd be the main thoroughfare to watch out for. Now these flash flood watches, this is for this afternoon, evening, and nighttime. Also too, we've extended the flood warning for the Osage River all the way until next week. Yeah, it doesn't expire until Tuesday now. Temperatures up into the high 80s, may even see a 90, but more importantly, here's the thunderstorms that we'll pay attention to for the afternoon. Instead of going toward Kansas City, watch this. They put on the brakes and they fall down on us. 1.5 to 3 inches of rain with some thunder and lightning as this rolls through. While the heaviest is gone by Friday morning, look, it then turns sporadic and scattered. And so that's why the flooding concerns persist all the way into Friday afternoon. Let's go ahead and know those roads that are prone to flooding, let's go ahead and plan on them for tomorrow morning.
Love the fact that the storms have like an inner monologue, and so they've decided to, like, hey, we're going to come down here and give some rain to the 4-state area.
It's the best way Hayslip knows how to describe like what's going on the map.
Right.
When they, when the storms are like, nah, we're still on the
brakes.
Let's
go this way.
Yeah. No, we're going to stop and come down here. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, thank you, Michael.
It's me, the glow cloud, and the weather, and the inner monologue.
Right. It's a good combination.
Dangerous triumvirate.
Right. Thank you, though. Freeman COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are on the rise in the 4-state area, and it's a major cause for concern for Freeman's coronavirus team. Freeman cardiologist Robert Stauffer is trying to convince the unvaccinated public to get their shots and address the media saying vaccines are the only way for the four-state area to truly overcome the pandemic. He also has a warning for those who think that because they previously had the coronavirus, they're now in the clear.
People will say, well, I had COVID. That doesn't necessarily protect you against this Delta variant. I want you to understand that very seriously. The vaccines do, but having COVID does not necessarily protect you from getting this Delta variant, which is much more contagious and a much more serious illness.
Joblin's mayor tells us that city government is listening to the local medical community and is not currently discussing bringing back COVID-19 restrictions. He and other members of city leadership believe focusing on getting the community vaccinated is the best way to beat the virus. Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed bills that would increase police accountability, limit the use of officer chokeholds, and, critics say, shield police while ramping up penalties for protesters. One measure puts limits on investigations of officers and provides protection against civil claims unless the officer is criminally convicted. The other bans police use of chokeholds. The city of Joplin is performing a structural analysis on a parking structure on East 6th Street between Main and Virginia Avenue. The analysis comes after pieces of the structure's ramp fell off when a forklift drove over it. That section of the street is closed off while the work is completed. Right now, crews are using a non-destructive method of testing, X-raying the underlying structural steel.
When that reinforcing steel becomes exposed and becomes deteriorated, then you have concerns about the structural integrity, and we're way ahead of any imminent failure.
The last time the structure was rehabbed was in the 80s. Renovations are expected to take place in the winter. The city of Columbus, Kansas gave residents an update on changes to the city's permitting and code policies. City officials say they're trying to speed up projects that would otherwise get bogged down in red tape. So they made changes to the permit process as well as city codes. Officials say the goal of these changes is to encourage more people to move to Columbus.
We really want to develop those relationships and be partners with the community members and all those in the construction field. We really want to draw as much outside visitors and potential residents here as we possibly can.
Residents that showed up to the presentation were given a free dinner and door prizes. Buffalo Run Casino and Resort in Miami, Oklahoma unveiled recent renovations made to the building. Those renovations include a new esports lounge and a golf simulator. There's also a new bar and stage setup.
So this afternoon, after our ribbon cutting, we invited all of our guests from the chamber and community representatives into the casino, into the restaurant, and it filled up very quickly. And so we were glad to share appetizers and stories and handshakes. It was a great afternoon.
In total, the renovations cost more than $3 million. It's 6:07.
Here's a gorgeous sight outside of Television City, almost the calm before the storm, if you will, because it's nice and warm and pleasant outside on this Thursday morning. And then we get to the afternoon, and here come the thunderstorms. They roll in from northwest, move down southeast, 1.5 to 3 inches of rain before it's all said and done, with flash flood watches lasting until Friday afternoon and temperatures in the high 80s headed into the weekend.
That's a look at this morning's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Coming up on the KOAM Morning News, new rounds of federal funds.
Millions of families will start to see long-awaited financial relief this week. I'm Elise Preston with the rollout of new expanded child tax credit payments.
Plus, more cases and more hospitalizations as the Delta variant creates a new COVID surge. And it's Med Day Thursday, and we hear from Crawford County Health Officer on vaccine hesitancy in the area. You're watching the KOAM Morning News. More real news in the morning. We'll be right back. In Consumer Watch this morning, millions of families will be able to access a new round of federal funds starting today. The American Rescue Plan that Congress passed in March boosts the child tax credit. Elise Preston tells us how it works.
Memphis real estate agent Evelyn Mitchell-Irby saw business drop dramatically when the pandemic started. Then life-changing news hit the mother of two.
During the pandemic, you battled both lupus and breast cancer.
I've been battling lupus since 2017, and I had breast cancer surgery February 25th. So that was a huge undertaking, just taking the time off and the recuperation.
She had to stop working for months of recovery, and the bills piled up. But now Mitchell-Irby and millions of other parents are getting some extra money from the government. The child tax credit is up from $2,000 to $3,600 for kids under 6 and $3,000 for older children. Half the money will be paid out over 6 months. Parents will have to claim the rest on their tax returns, and families have to make under a certain amount to qualify. For a married couple filing jointly, that's $150,000 or less. The IRS will send out money based on last year's tax return. So people who started making more money this year and no longer qualify for the credit need to go to irs.gov and opt out.
Because if you get it and you don't qualify, you have to pay back that money to Uncle Sam next tax season.
Mitchell-Irby is now cancer-free and working again, but the extra money is welcome after months of lost wages.
Everything has increased, so at least being able to help put a dent in some of those bills will be great.
A financial boost helping her move forward as she puts the past year behind her. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
Families that make no income will also receive the credit. Parents can go to the IRS Child Credit Portal for more information. And the daily grind may get a bit harder as the price of your morning cup of joe goes up. Reports warn coffee prices are on the rise. A mix of setbacks in the production of coffee beans combined with an increased demand is causing the price of popular Arabica coffee beans to inch up. Brazil, one of the world's leading coffee producers, is facing a drought, making it harder for farmers to keep up with the world's growing needs for the caffeinated drink. Producers are hoping for more rain in the forecast within the coming months to help production. KRAFT mac and cheese ice cream debuts in New York City. Dozens of people lined up for a scoop from the KRAFT ice cream truck Wednesday. The brand is partnering up with Brooklyn-based Van Leeuwen Ice Cream to produce the limited edition treat. According to KRAFT, the ice cream is made with no artificial flavors, preservatives, or dyes. The ice cream was a huge hit in New York, where several ice cream lovers described it as very cheesy. The KRAFT macaroni and cheese ice cream will be available online for orders on Van Leeuwen's website for $12 a pint starting Wednesday while supplies last.
I'm glad you revisited our price point there.
Right. $12. Once again, if you want to try it, may not be the same deal, but just get some vanilla ice cream and take a packet of the cheese from KRAFT mac and cheese. Just mix them together, you know. Maybe it would probably taste about the same, but yeah, a lot cheaper anyway.
And get this, Zach and I will actually make you a pint of that, and we'll do it for $11.99.
$11.99. Yes.
Boom! Undercutting
yeah.
corporate America right there. Dodge and I are our finest when it comes to business models. That's why we work in a television studio.
Right.
Live lookout, 7th and Range Line. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous sunrise. We're just a couple minutes past official sunrise in Joplin. 75 degrees is where we stand. I'm going to talk a little bit about our wind here, but very, very comfortable outside, mid to high 70s. And it didn't calm down overnight. It is still, it's coming in with at a nice clip. Haven't picked up any large wind gusts, but it's still a little breezy out there. It's not kind of nice though. Skywatch Storm Tracker, we are picking up some thunderstorm activity in our far, far northwestern counties. Everything right here, everything from Greenwood County to Burlington to Garnett, it's moving toward Kansas City. Now, drop down here a little bit, and that one by Howard, that thing is going to roll over Highway 400 there as it kind of progresses. But you notice the cone shape. That one's going to move just east. Ours are going to develop in that same area this afternoon and then drop down on us from northwest to southeast. So we'll be paying attention to that here probably about 12:30, 1 p.m. as it begins to gather and then take us all the way into Friday morning. Be back with more KOAM Morning News on a Midday Thursday right after this. Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on this Midday Thursday. Of course, not only locally, but the national perspective about COVID-19 and what's known as the Delta variant is the growing number of cases over the past several weeks, if not months. We're joined today by Dr. Tim Stebbins. Dr. Stebbins joining us as the Crawford County Health Officer. You're going to be familiar with him as he holds a number of very important medical roles throughout the entire area of Southeast Kansas. Dr. Stebbins, thank you so much for your time. He's actually joining us right now from an emergency room. This is how busy he's been. Doc, I would like to start with the uptick of cases that you've seen, particularly within Crawford County. Some of the numbers you were giving me just for the first 3 days this week were rather startling.
Right. So over Monday, Tuesday, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we've had 64 new cases already this week. Last week we had 93 total cases in the 7-day period, and that was preceded by a couple weeks of 50s. But we've seen a significant uptick over the last month.
I think the question coming off of that is, with this uptick, would this be what I would refer to, I apologize for using layman's terms here, would this be the old original COVID-19, or we're hearing so much about the Delta variant? What exactly are you seeing?
This is probably almost entirely the Delta variant. We have done surveillance on the positives over the last several weeks. Well, we do that every week. And we have found over the last few weeks the variants, the Delta variant is the only variant that we were seeing. We were seeing Alpha for a while, that's the UK strain, but now we switched entirely to the Delta. And that doesn't mean that all of those cases are the Delta variant, but in my opinion, almost all of these cases will be the Delta variant.
With this increase that you've seen in the past 2 weeks here, are we talking about the high-risk population as in extremely young kids and the elderly? Is that where we're seeing the majority of the cases?
The majority of our cases are in the 18 to 64-year-old category.
18 to 64?
So 49 of our 64 cases this week are in the 18 to 64. And that's somewhat comforting because the very young and very old, and really it's the very old, are certainly the highest risk category. That being said, the Delta variant, people are catching that easier. Those that made it through the first wave and thought that they were going to be okay are not. Those with immune system problems, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, in that middle age group are getting hit significantly harder than what they had anticipated, and we've even had some deaths in that category.
Dr. Tim Stebbins, and once again, Doc, I want to thank you for your time. Dr. Stebbins actually right now is in the emergency room in Fort Scott, ready to begin his day. So, Doc, I want to thank you so much for your time. Dr. Tim Stebbins, Crawford County Health Officer on this Midday Thursday. Do me a favor, Dr. Stebbins, just be safe, sir. And thank you for all that you do for our community.
Thank you, and please help us get this word out. And if there's anything more I can do to help with that, you call me back, or we'll get back on and we'll keep going with it.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll be back with more KOAM Morning News right after this.
Topping Health Watch this morning, the Delta variant is fueling a new surge of COVID-19 cases in the U.S., with cases more than doubling in the past 3 weeks. Fox News correspondent Lauren Blanchard has more from Washington.
The spread of the Delta variant accelerates. We're seeing a big spike in new COVID cases across the U.S. 48 states are now reporting an increase, and the total number of new cases has more than doubled over the past 3 weeks. On Tuesday, there were more than 41,000 infections reported, up from just 15,000 the same time last month. And experts say it's only going to get worse.
And I think we can expect to see hospitalizations rise. We'll probably see deaths go up. It is concerning. Things are not trending in the right direction.
The spread of the Delta variant has been quicker than anticipated because it has a significantly higher viral load, meaning more of the virus escapes with each cough or sneeze, making it much more contagious than the original strain. And public health officials now say virtually all COVID hospitalizations are a result of the variant.
This Delta variant, it spreads faster,
and it is in many cases reported to be much more serious in terms of its impact.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are joining a big push by the Biden administration to get shots in arms, especially in rural areas where vaccination rates are lagging and the virus is spreading more quickly.
It's not just for your health that taking the vaccine, it's for the health of others as well. Let's get back to work, back to health, back to school.
After several sunscreens are being recalled after traces of a cancer-causing agent were found in some bottles. Johnson & Johnson is recalling certain Neutrogena and Aveeno sunscreen because small amounts of benzene were found in some samples. The Neutrogena sunscreens are Beach Defense, Cool Dry Sport, Invisible Daily Defense, and the Ultra Sheer line. The Aveeno product affected is the Protect and Refresh aerosol sunscreen. The chemical found in some of the bottles, benzene, could cause cancer with repeated exposure. J&J suggests everyone stop using the products and call the company to request a refund. The coronavirus pandemic worsened the country's drug epidemic as deaths from overdoses increased during the COVID lockdown. A record number of Americans died in 2020 from drug overdoses as lockdown restrictions and isolation made them more vulnerable to relapses and getting treatment was more difficult. New data shows those deaths jumped nearly 30% to more than 93,000 last year. That's a look at some of today's top health stories. You're watching the KOAM Morning News.
Let's go ahead and take a look at our thunderstorm development for this afternoon as it will gather out to the northwest, and once it begins to stop its northeasterly track, then it's going to move southeast right down through us. This is going to last through tonight into Friday morning. See some heavy rain right there, 1.5 to 3 inches of rain. And even after the hard rain pushes through on Friday, it then gets a little bit more sporadic and scattered all the way through Friday afternoon and evening as well. Not only flooding is going to be a threat, but we'll see some high wind, lightning, and hear some thunder at times. A 7-day forecast with temperatures that are going to ride the high 80s and scattered rain all the way through the weekend. Flash flood watches until 1 p.m. Friday.
Coming up, a Freeman cardiologist has a warning for 4-staters as COVID-19 cases continue to rise in our region. And Missouri Governor PARSON signs a bill that would increase police accountability and limit chokeholds. Also, the first step in an overdue improvement project in Joplin.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Good morning and welcome to the KOAM Morning News. It's 6:30. I'm Zach Dodge. The sun is starting to come up a little bit, peek out from around the clouds and, well, the trees anyway. I was thinking about the fact we're going to have clouds later this afternoon because of the rain chances, Michael.
There are, but we're going to have a gorgeous morning, though.
Yeah.
You're exactly right about the sun coming right over the tree line there. It's 7th and range line. It's been an absolutely gorgeous and warm morning as well, 75 degrees, and the wind still barreling in from the south right there. We're ranging anywhere from 71s in Monette and Cassville all the way to 77 in Chanute. No 60s on the board on this warm morning. As far as the rain that we are seeing on the far western edge of southeast Kansas, pushing up through Greenwood County right now by Eureka, getting a good amount of it, and then to Garnett. Yates Center, kind of the cutoff line. Then down here in between Howard and Sedan, we've got another one that is actually going to pass over Highway 400 here. That one does not have any lightning on it, just a thin line of some heavy rain. But that's actually not what's causing all the flash flood watches indicated in turquoise, nor the reason for the extension of the flood warning for the Osage River. The reason being, we're going to gather up some additional activity. That line right there is just going to follow the jet stream. So it's going to stay really to the northwest of the majority of the 4 states. But when we get to the afternoon hours, we're going to change our tune a little bit. Gathering out to the northwest, and instead of tracking toward Kansas City, decides, going to come down right through the 4 states right there. 1.5 to 3 inches of rain with thunder and lightning. Also, high winds are going to be a threat as we find ourselves just in the marginal level of the severe thunderstorm risk map. After the rains roll through, we're going to get more scattered instead of strong storms throughout Friday. And then our chances for rain persist all the way through the weekend, an indicator of why that flood warning for the Osage, it's actually not going to really decrease until we get to the middle of next week.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about the fact that it's not until the middle of next week.
Next week, yeah. I know, almost, you know,
expire.
we're talking 5 days away before that thing should be all the way below flood stage.
Right, but thank you very much, Michael. The total number of COVID-19 patients in Joplin hospitals exceeds 100 people. Between Freeman and Mercy hospitals, there are 104 hospitalized COVID-19 patients. 19 of those hospitalizations are Joplin residents. 138 Joplin residents have died from COVID-19. A cardiologist at Joplin's Freeman Hospital is speaking out and warning the public as the coronavirus case count continues to rise in the four-state area. KOAM's Mike Mahoney reports if past coronavirus restrictions could make a comeback in Joplin.
Because Missouri has probably one of the lowest vaccination rates, we have the highest incidence of the Delta variant and COVID coming back. In areas of the country where it's 80% vaccinated, there's almost no COVID. It's over.
Freeman cardiologist Dr. Robert Stauffer issued a dire plea to the unvaccinated public Wednesday, saying coronavirus vaccines are the only way for the four-state area to truly overcome the pandemic.
This is not an East Coast thing. It's not a West Coast thing. It's not a red state versus blue state. It's not who you voted for. This is about Joplin and the four states area doing what is right and rising up to this crisis that we have. And it is a crisis.
Dr. Stauffer also stressed that even if you get and beat COVID-19, there could be some serious long-term health issues.
You think, well, if I get it, I can survive it. Well, you might survive it, but you might have long-lasting pulmonary damage, heart damage, and things that will change the velocity of your life.
With vaccine hesitancy being a major hurdle to overcome on the community's path towards herd immunity, the doctor also answered a question on many people's minds. Should coronavirus restrictions make a comeback?
I don't think at this point in time, but if they have a point where we're getting there, where we don't have enough hospital beds, we may be in a position where we're having trouble.
That answer is in sync with the opinions of Joplin Mayor Ryan Stanley and City Council member Christina Williams, who said during phone interviews that the city leadership is listening to advice from the four-state medical community and believes focusing on vaccinations is a more effective route to permanently beating the coronavirus. They say as of now there are no plans to bring back pandemic restrictions and believe those who would take them most seriously are four-staters who have already been vaccinated. In Joplin, Mike Mahoney, KOAM News.
Dr. Stauffer adds that people should not believe they're immune to COVID-19 because they've already had an earlier version of the virus. He says those people have zero protection against the virus's Delta variant. The city of Joplin is performing a structural analysis on a parking structure on East 6th Street between Main and Virginia Avenue. The analysis comes after pieces of the structure's ramp fell off when a forklift drove over it. That section of the street is closed off while the work is completed. Crews are currently using a non-destructive method of testing, X-raying the underlying structural steel.
That reinforcing steel becomes exposed and becomes deteriorated. Then you have concerns about the structural integrity, and we're way ahead of any imminent failure.
The last time the structure was rehabbed was in the 80s. Renovations are expected to take place in the winter. Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed bills that would increase police accountability, limit the use of officer chokeholds, and critics say shield police while ramping up penalties for protesters. One measure puts limits on investigations of officers and provides protection against civil claims unless the officer is criminally convicted. The other bans police use of chokeholds. That's a look at our top news stories. Coming up this half hour on the KOAM Morning News, a meeting on Capitol Hill.
President Biden meets with Senate Democrats on Capitol Hill as he tries to push forward his infrastructure plan. I'm Natalie Brand with details of a new spending deal, plus why the process is far from over.
Plus, for our Something to Talk About, we're asking, should cannabis be legalized on the federal level? we let you weigh in. But first, it's 6:37.
Day planner going to put us up into the high 80s before the thunderstorm activity begins out to the northwest. We have flash flood watches, excuse me, for the majority of the 4 states. Anywhere from 1.5 to 3 inches of rain as this thing rolls through all night long into Friday morning, and then scattered chances for the rest of Friday into the weekend. We'll be back with Nation Watch next.
Get ready.
Topping Nation Watch this morning, President Biden says the only way he can get his infrastructure priorities done is through a 2-track approach. He met with Democrats on Capitol Hill ahead of another meeting with a bipartisan group of governors and mayors at the White House, as lawmakers hash out a bipartisan bill focused on hard infrastructure and a separate, larger spending bill that only has Democrat support. Natalie Brand has more from Capitol Hill.
President Biden huddled with Senate Democrats on Capitol Hill less than 24 hours after they announced a deal on a budget plan that focuses on what he calls human infrastructure.
We're going to get this done. We are getting this done.
The $3.5 trillion agreement includes money for childcare, Medicare, and climate. CBS News has learned the Democrats plan to offset their proposal in part through reforms to the tax code focused on corporations and households making more than $400,000 a year.
We have an agreement. There may be slight changes. I'm not sure what may happen, exactly how, but it's going to be paid for.
The budget bill is expected to be pushed through the 50-50 Senate without Republican support using reconciliation. Senate Republicans oppose the Democratic bill, and it remains to be seen whether it impacts progress on a separate bipartisan physical infrastructure bill.
I think it's a real mistake, what they're doing, but it doesn't affect us at all. I mean, we are on a totally separate track. The infrastructure bill is bipartisan.
Meetings on infrastructure continued back at the White House, where President Biden hosted a bipartisan group of governors and mayors.
This is an issue that has dragged on for the better part of a decade, but I think we are right on the cusp here.
As the administration tries to solidify support for that roughly $1 trillion package focused on upgrading roads, bridges, and broadband. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, Washington.
This week, more than 369 mayors from both parties penned an open letter to the president and congressional leaders, urging them to take immediate action on the bipartisan infrastructure framework, quote, in the spirit of progress and compromise. Thousands of firefighters are battling dozens of wildfires across large parts of the western U.S. More than 1 million acres of land have burned in about 8 dozen states anyway. U.S. fire officials report a shortage of jet fuel could ground some planes used to drop retardant on fires. As crews continue to search for victims of the deadly condo collapse in Surfside, Florida, a Miami-Dade judge ordered the start of the process to sell the land on which the building once stood. Court records say the land could bring in up to $100 million. What the site will eventually become remains unclear. Some survivors say they want a new apartment building constructed there. The more contagious COVID-19 Delta variant is tightening its grip on the nation. New coronavirus cases in every state except Arizona and South Dakota are up at least 10%. In 32 states, they are up 50% or more. That's a look at today's top national stories. Now let's check back in with Michael for our Something to Talk About.
Thank you, Zach. This morning on the KOAM News Now Facebook page in our morning Insta poll, Democratic senators introducing a plan to legalize cannabis at the federal level. Senators Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and Ron Wyden dubbed their plan the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, a plan that comes after a call for the decriminalization of marijuana from several lawmakers. Chuck Schumer says the legislation would include social justice provisions, federal taxes, and regulations. In the meantime, 18 states, 2 U.S. territories, and D.C. have all legalized marijuana for recreational use. Legal cannabis sales in the country surpassed $17.5 billion in 2020, compared to just more than $12 million in 2019. So get that, Zach. One has a B.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
The other one's got an M.
A lot of money.
Our question to you, should cannabis be legalized on the federal level? Earlier, everybody was running at 30%. Now we're seeing this widen. 61% say yes, 16% say medical cannabis only, 23% say no. And Zach, just to reiterate a point that you made earlier, that would be 77% of total respondents believing it should be legal in some form or fashion.
Medical and yes, if I'm pointing the right way, are both technically forms of yes.
Right, forms of legalization. You can make your voice heard. The poll's still open. Go to KOAMnewsnow.com/vote. Zach and I will be back. Celebrate birthdays and anniversaries right after this.
We take this time to honor today's four-state hero, Senior Chief Petty Officer Larry Shanks, who served in the United States Navy from 1964 to 1976 in Vietnam. His hometown, Pittsburgh, Kansas. We're proud to salute Larry Shanks, a four-state hero.
The birthday list begins with a sharp-dressed Gabe Lance. Gabe, a very happy 8th birthday to you. He is in Pittsburgh.
Mason Young, celebrating her 11th birthday in Humboldt. Happy birthday, Mason.
And just down the road, Allison Splector is celebrating her 11th birthday as well. Allison, I want you to have a great birthday weekend. She's in Chanute.
And we have a very sweet 16 for Jenna Babcock in Parsons with her doggy as well. Super cute picture.
Colby Collins hitting the big 2-0. He's posing with it with his
There's another doggy
right there. Yeah. Happy birthday to Colby in Oswego.
And a happy birthday to Jan McElwain, turning 56 in Girard. And this is actually a belated birthday. So happy birthday from your entire family, Jan.
It's belated because he's got his hands full.
Right.
Jan's busy. Spoiled is what that kid's going to do. Jan's going to take care of him. Jim Godine's a happy 71st birthday to Mr. Jim. He is celebrating in Chanute.
And a happy birthday to Anna Reagan in Fort Scott. Their birthday was yesterday.
Tina Omi, she is turning 58. Tina, a happy birthday to you in Pittsburgh.
And a very happy birthday to Corbin Martin, turning 18 in Columbus. And that comes from Grandma and Papa Martin. Also, a very happy birthday to Shirley Cocker, turning 80 years old in Parsons.
Got an anniversary to pass along as Roy and Winnie Pack are celebrating their 68th. Congratulations to Roy and Winnie. They are also celebrating in Chanute. Happy birthday, happy anniversary to all. This is where you can send them in. Birthdays at KOAMTV.com. You can also go to KOAMnewsnow.com and submit your birthday and anniversary. Just do us a favor. Be specific there exactly what day you want it to run. And always try to send in a picture of the birthday, or love those throwback pictures that we get when it comes to the wedding anniversaries as well. Now, here's Zach Dodge with a very important birthday announcement.
You can be part of the KOAM Birthday Club by going to our website and signing up. You can also get special deals from local businesses. So go to KOAMnewsnow.com and sign up for the KOAM Birthday Club today.
Well, this can't come as any surprise as we break open the weather almanac. Guess where the record high for July 15th comes from? That's right, 1954, as it has pretty much all week. Dates back to 54 when it got up to 105 degrees right here in the middle of the month. That's a far cry, though. Remember, there was a 115 from 1954 earlier this week. Excuse me. We're starting to have some cloud cover beginning to creep in over 7th and Rangeline and outside the mothership right there. Here's our current conditions in Joplin. 75 degrees. Wind has not calmed down in the least, but it's still very delightful outside. 74 in Pittsburgh and Miami. Let's roll 77, our high spot there in Chanute. And now we've got 74s in Neosho and in Anderson. A look at a little rain that's clipping the far northwestern and western portions of southeast Kansas. There's a lightning strike that we picked up in Greenwood County. Everything progressing toward Kansas City. This is not the one that's going to sweep down on us and provide us with the flash flood watches we have. A lot of good lightning there along I-70 as well. But put on a little storm track and give you an idea how that thing's tracking off to the northeast. Do have this one that's in between Howard and Sedan. because it's moving over 160 right now. So next stop will be Highway 400. Now, no lightning associated with it, but it's almost two little bands if you got to take 400 out to the west. We got one that's going to be on it, and then this one just at the north of Cedarvale. That's going to provide some pretty hard rain as well. Let's fast forward here to our future track. I looked at the clock and yeah, it just like magically counted down on me. So let's get to the good stuff. All right, thunderstorms develop to the northwest this afternoon. Now, instead of headed toward Kansas City, watch this. They just decided to fall right down on us. That's heavy rain right there. So we've got flash flood watches until Friday afternoon. We're looking at 1.5 to 3 inches of rain overnight into Friday afternoon as well, because even after the heavy rain goes through, look at this, still becomes more of the scattered intermittent variety. Temperatures going to be in the 80s, just chances for rain persisting through the weekend. We'll be back. More KOAM morning news right after this.
Here's a check of today's top headlines, the news you need to know before you head out the door. Thousands of firefighters are battling dozens of wildfires across large parts of the western U.S. More than 1 million acres of land have burned in about a dozen states. That as U.S. fire officials report a shortage of jet fuel that could ground some planes used to drop retardant on fires. COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are on the rise in the four-state area, and it's a major cause for concern for Freeman's coronavirus team. Freeman cardiologist Robert Stauffer is trying to convince the unvaccinated public to get their shots and adjust the media, saying vaccines are the only way for the four-state area to truly overcome the pandemic. Joplin's mayor tells us that city government is listening to the local medical community and is not currently discussing bringing back COVID-19 restrictions. He and other members of city leadership believe focusing on getting the community vaccinated is the best way to beat the virus. Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed bills that would increase police accountability, limit the use of officer chokeholds, and critics say, shield police while ramping up penalties for protesters. One measure puts limits on investigations of officers and provides protection against civil claims unless the officer is criminally convicted. The other bans police use of chokeholds. The city of Joplin is performing a structural analysis on a parking structure on East 6th Street between Main and Virginia Avenue. The analysis comes after pieces of the structure's ramp fell off when a forklift drove over it. That section of the street is closed off while the work is completed. Crews are currently using a non-destructive method of testing, X-raying the underlying structural steel. Renovations are expected to take place in the winter. That's a check of today's top headlines, the news you need to know before you head out the door.
Flooding is our major concern for this afternoon, evening, all the way into Friday, as thunderstorms are going to develop out to the northwest. Temperatures today still able to make it up into the high 80s, maybe even see a 90 every now and then. But here's the important part. Instead of moving toward Kansas City this afternoon, they decided they're going to drop southeast and do so right on us, anywhere from 1.5 inches to 3 inches of rain as the flash flood watches last all the way until Friday afternoon. Even though we see a little break there, watch this just come back with more scattered rain throughout Friday, and our chances for rain persisting into the weekend with temperatures in the high 80s.
And coming up today at noon, we'll hear more from Dr. Stauffer at Freeman on why he is pushing the public to get vaccinated as soon as they can.
Speaking of hearing from doctors, we've got the CBS Morning News that's coming on KOAM, or you can flip over to Fox 14 with Zach and I, where we've got an interview with the Chief Medical Officer of Crawford County, Kansas, one Dr. Tim Stebbins, talking about the spike that they've seen recently as far as the Delta variant goes as well. Definitely. Also, of course, any flash flood watches, warnings, anything else pops up, we're going to have it for you over on Fox 14. That wraps up this Thursday edition. We'll plan on those roads being flooded for tomorrow. Right now, let's go ahead and make the alternative route while you're thinking about it. Do me a favor, be safe. We'll do this all again tomorrow morning.
Thanks for tuning in.